Let's do a little icebreaker question here, guys. I want you to think back to something in your life that you worked really hard to accomplish. And I don't just mean physically, like you went out and worked really hard, but I'm talking like time. I'm talking like time, effort, something that you had to invest in to have happen. So something in your life that you really gave all of yourself to. It took a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of investment, but in the end it paid off. All right? 1, 2, 3, go. So, it's been a little while since I've been up here. Actually, it's been about a month since I've been up here. And as we were working through the schedule of who was the upcoming speakers, you know, I've been speaking up here. I look back over it since 2008. And this was the first time that somebody has said to me, "Well, we don't need you to speak for a month." And at first, I'll be honest with you, I started feeling kind of insecure. I mean, I'll just be completely real about that. I watched, you know, some of the guys, Dave and Aaron and Joe and Jared, and some of the guys that stood up here and talked. And even though that's what I've been praying for, and I've been involved in their lives, and it just couldn't have made me happier to see them up there. There was still that part of me. It was just kind of like, okay, where do I fit in now? But as I prayed to God about it, I got over that pretty quickly and got done with my little pity party. But then I had a second revelation. And what I thought was, you know, I've got an extra day of the week now that I can spend with my wife and that I can spend with God. Because typically for me on Sundays, you know, most of the day I'm kind of locked up in the room. The dogs aren't allowed to come in. April's not allowed to come in because I'm getting ready for Monday nights. So I thought to myself, I was like, you know, this is going to be really cool. I'm going to use this time, first of all, and I'm going to intentionally invest in spending time with my wife. And probably more importantly, I'm going to spend this time really getting into Scripture, spending time with God, and really developing my relationship with God so that when I did get back up and speak again a month later, I would probably have something really profound to say, right? Because my relationship with God would just be on a whole completely different level. So what really happened was, since I had told my wife that my intentions were to be more intentional with her, that happened. So every single Sunday for the last month, is this on? Every single Sunday for the last month, we hung out together. We went and saw family. We hung out with other Christ followers. One night, somehow, she even convinced me to go over to Dave Koont's house. So we spent a lot of time together. But I'll be completely honest with you guys. Over the last month, I've spent less time with God than what I typically do. And I've been thinking about that, and one of the things that has become clear to me is whenever you have to stand up in front of a group of guys each week and give kind of a clear account of where you're at with God, and there's going to be a big audience, it really kind of forces you to have a dependency upon God and to seek Him throughout the week. And when I didn't have that, I'll be honest with you, I slacked off. I did the exact opposite of what I said that I was going to do. I spent less time with God. So here's my report. You know, I said, you know, each week when I get up here, I have to give a report and kind of let you guys know where I'm at with God. My report is, I didn't spend as much time with God, but I spent a lot more time with my wife. And how did that work out? Well, I'll tell you. Last week, we sat down and my wife said, "Will, I recognize that you have been going out of your way to spend time with me." She said, "But at the same time, I have to be honest with you. I've never felt more unloved. I've never felt more uncared for." She said, "Your heart has hardened. I'm starting to see that you're developing impatience. And at times, whenever I've needed you, I've found you going from a place of where typically you used to pray with me and take me to God, and now you've gone back into this place of the old Will, where you would start to try and fix me." Right? I don't know about you guys. Have you ever set out with like kind of this grand plan of, this is what I'm going to do with God over the next month, or this is what I'm going to do with God, or I'm going to set out and I'm going to do this, and at the end of it, you just didn't quite get there. It didn't quite go the way that you planned. Well, I've been thinking about this week, and basically what happened for me and what I want to share with you guys tonight is I fell into a trap. For the last 4 weeks, my feet have been snugly embraced in a snare. And I want to share that with you guys tonight because I think a lot of us get trapped in this a lot. So let me just give me a second to flip my board here. The trap is the belief that we don't have to continue to seek after an unchanging God in a world which is always changing. I want you to take a second and read that one again. The trap is the belief that we don't have to continue to seek after an unchanging God in a world which is always changing. And I want to break that down a little bit. Let's take a look at the first part of that. A God which never changes. Now, at first glance, and honestly, at the core of me, that gives me a lot of comfort, that God doesn't change. I know that God is trustworthy. I know that God always keeps his promises to me. I know that God never changes. The exact same God that spoke the world into motion, the exact same God that spoke to Moses is the exact same God that we are sitting here tonight seeking after. But on another level, what happens is I start to get this idea in my head that since God doesn't change, I start to notice things about myself, like I'll listen to a sermon and I'll say something like, I've heard that before. Or I'll start to read a scripture and I'll say, I've read that before. I really didn't get anything out of that. So in a twisted, if I'm completely honest, in a twisted level, I start to get to these points where I start to recognize if God isn't changing, maybe I don't need to seek him on a daily basis. Maybe I don't have to look at him on a daily basis to renew my mind. Now let's take a look at the second part of that equation. In a world which is always changing. One thing that's become apparent to me over the last few weeks is whether we're aware of it or not, whether we acknowledge it or not, or whether we take any action towards it or not, our minds are constantly being renewed. That is, the mind that's inside my cranium right now is not the same mind I had when I was 15 years old. The mind that I had when I was 25 years old, or the mind that I even had when I was 35 years old, which was not very long ago, by the way. But our minds are in a perpetual state of renewal. And what I've found is, and what I've learned from this is, guys, whenever I stop seeking God on a daily basis and allowing him to renew my mind, and listen to this, I find myself ill-prepared to deal with the temptations and the daily challenges that occur in a world which is always changing, and responding to them in a way that is Christ-like. Now, I just threw a whole bunch of words out there, so I'm going to say it again, okay? When I stop looking to God, when I stop seeking God to renew my mind on a daily basis, I find myself ill-prepared to respond to the daily temptations and challenges of a life which is always changing, and responding in a way that is in a Christ-like manner. Okay? So the question for tonight, the question I want you guys to really start to wrestle with right now is, your mind is perpetually renewing. And the question I want to ask you right now is, what are you renewing it with? Okay? Let's pull up the second board. Thank you for the lovely Vanna White here.
I didn't smear it.
Yes, you totally did smear it. Okay, we're going to try and work through this as best we can. Everybody say a quick prayer that Will can work through this. But what are you renewing your mind with? Are you allowing God to renew your mind, or are you allowing the world to renew your mind? And here are just some diagnostic questions that I wanted to ask you guys. When was the last time you learned something new about God and were changed because of it? Stop and think about that and kind of answer that question for yourself. When was the last time you learned something new about God and were changed because of it? Do you find your relationship or your lessons, and more importantly, your revelations from God, are all in the past? How many times do you find yourself sitting around these tables saying, God has done amazing things in my life 20 years ago? Have you stopped allowing God to renew your mind? Has your understanding of who God is and what he desires for your life stopped expanding? This is where I fall short, guys. I start to think maybe after a while that I've got the creator of the universe figured out. How stupid is that? Let me say that one again. Has your understanding of who God is and what He desires for your life stopped expanding? And finally, are you telling God, I don't need help with this. I've got it in the large and small things of your ever-changing world? Are you looking to God not only in the big things, but for the small things in your life? I think that's one critical way that we can tell if we're allowing God to renew us on a daily basis. Are we seeking Him in the small things? Or are we just looking and saying, God, I've got this?